Argentina, local elections in Tucumán, San Luis and other provinces continue without incidents. In Russia, the Ministry of Defense denounced a new drone attack by Ukraine against a vessel of the Black Sea Fleet. And in Israel, thousands demonstrated for the 23rd straight week against Netanyahu's controversial judicial reform plans and the violence hitting Arab communities. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Argentina, provincial elections in Tucumán, San Luis and other provinces are progressing normally. The first reports concerning the development of elections in the provinces of Tucumán and San Luis indicate that voters are going to the polling stations under normal conditions, and so far there have not been any significant incidents. Meanwhile, in the provinces of Mendoza and Corrientes, citizens also went to the polls peacefully to vote within the framework of the party elections in the first one and for senators, provincial deputies and municipal councillors in the second one. Local elections in Argentina are considered as a test by the different political forces and associations of the South American country in view of next October 22nd presidential election. Claudio Pogge, candidate for governor of the province of San Luis, talked about the opposition bloc's disagreement over the ley lemmas, law of slogans.
The law of lemmas was a sanctioned law in the province by the end of last year. Our bloc voted against it because we did not agree with it. It is an old law that was almost fraudulent and expensive because you saw the amount of ballots and we paid for it all. It's polluting because of the amount of ink. Nevertheless, we work hard for the law and we adapted to the opposition, and we built a great opposition slogan called Change San Luis.
The candidate for governor in the province of Tucumán, Osvaldo Haldo, reaffirmed his commitment to the work he has been doing as vice governor while expressing his willingness to make improvements in the same.
First of all, I'd like to confirm my role as vice governor, and I was also in charge when Dr. Juan Mansur was chief of staff. I have governed the province of Tucumán for 513 days. Therefore, the people of Tucumán already know. They have seen me govern. They have seen me working. They have seen me taking important decisions. So what I can really do is commit myself to confirm all the work we've done, consolidate everything this administration has done, change everything we haven't done, and made all the decisions that are necessary in order to get to the places and families that for different reasons we were not able to reach.
In Peru, Social Security President Aurelio Orellana said that dengue cases across the country will increase due to the influence of the El Niño weather phenomenon. In statements to the press, the official estimated that the increase in cases of the disease could vary between 10 and 15%, in addition to those already occurring daily. Orellana also stated that the authorities are preparing to face this eventual health situation. Peru is currently facing the largest outbreak of the disease in the present century. According to the Health Ministry, 130,826 cases have been confirmed so far this year, and at least 201 dengue-related deaths have been recorded. In Brazil, President Luis Inácio da Silva called for a mobilization in the face of the risk of extradition to the United States faced by activist Julian Assange. The head of state expressed his concern after the London High Court rejected Assange's extradition appeal. Lula reiterated that the arrest of the WikiLeaks founder was contrary to the defense of democracy and freedom of the press. In the face of the activist extradition, the Brazilian president called on the international community to demonstrate in support of Assange. The journalist's defense has until June 13th to file a new appeal. If this new appeal is rejected, Assange will face 18 charges and will have to answer to espionage charges in the United States, for which he could be sentenced to 175 years in prison. The 4 indigenous children rescued after 40 days missing in the Guaviare jungle are stable and recovering. After an initial multidisciplinary medical evaluation of the children, the Ministry of Defense reported they are in acceptable clinical conditions and rule out any life-threatening situation. The report specifies that in spite of this, the 4 children will continue to undergo clinical diagnostic tests, imaging, nutritional, and psychological recovery treatment. The children will be hospitalized for approximately 2 to 3 weeks and will continue to be attended by a multidisciplinary team. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. The Russian Ministry of Defense denounced a new attack by Ukraine against a vessel of the Black Sea Fleet. The Defense Ministry informed in a press release that Kiev's armed forces tried to attack a Russian war vessel that was performing tasks of protection of the Turkish Stream and Blue Stream gas pipelines in the southeast of the Black Sea. According to the report, 6 unmanned speedboats attempted to attack the Pryazovi ship. However, the vessel managed to repel the attack and destroy the enemy targets. The Russian defense assured that during the attack there were no casualties and the ship was not damaged. Authorities added that Russian reconnaissance ships is continuing its mission in its responsibility zone.
Fired from the standard weapons of the Russian ship, 300 kilometers southeast of Sevastopol. There were no casualties. The ship received no damage. During this period, as in the course of the previous similar attacks, the Strategic Reconnaissance Unmanned Aerial Vehicle RQ-4 Global Hawk of the U.S. Air Force conducted reconnaissance in the airspace of the central part of the Black Sea. The ship Pryazovi of the Black Sea Fleet continues to perform its task.
U.S. government officials informed that the new military aid package assigned to Ukraine will not be immediately sent. As detailed by government officials, most of this assistance will begin to be sent to the battlefield in a few months, or possibly years. This is because the weapons must first be commissioned and manufactured, in contrast to the government program that supplies war materials directly from U.S. Department of Defense warehouses. The Pentagon announced on Friday a new assistance package for Kiev estimated at $2.1 billion to purchase Hawk air defense systems, respective projectiles, Patriot air defense compounds, heavy artillery ammunition, Puma drones, and ammunition for laser-guided missile systems, among other things. The number of people hospitalized after the destruction of the dam of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant in the Kherson region has increased to 77. The information was provided by the acting governor of the region, Vladimir Saldo, who added that doctors were providing the patients with all the necessary medical care. Moscow has accused the Ukrainian armed forces for the attack on the morning of June 6. The action destroyed its valves and prompted an uncontrolled release of water, which affected 35 settlements whose residents are being evacuated. Local officials have reported 8 people dead, 2 of them killed in an artillery strike on an evacuation center. Residents of the resort town of Binz in the German island of Rügen fear tourists will be deterred by the government's plan to park 2 ships at the harbor to import liquefied natural gas. Berlin sees the new terminal as a guarantee against the risk of a potential gas shortage, but locals remain unconvinced, worried also about how it will affect the destination's health and prosperity. The German government has been frantically installing liquefied natural gas terminals along the coast to replace lost Russian supplies. Nord Stream 2, the controversial pipeline which would have relayed gas from Russia to Germany, was mysteriously sabotaged last year before it was ever put into use. Approval for the energy link was blocked by Berlin amid tensions over Russia's special military operation in Ukraine, while Moscow slowly dwindled gas deliveries to Europe, plunging the continent into an energy crisis.
I guess people won't be able to live here because it will be too noisy, because there will be too much vibration. There will be light pollution. That's not the biggest problem. You can pretend, of course, but I think it's just too noisy for your body to sleep here. Just at night, you won't be able to get any rest.
That is not the future for Germany, and certainly not the future for Rügen. An industrial port simply does not belong here, and the need has never really been confirmed by the federal government. Figures are always given, so to speak, in the discussions, but in the end there is no discussion about it. And you also have the feeling that every day there is a new water level report. So there are always new figures, and the arguments have also changed a lot. First there was talk of need, and now there is open talk of overcapacity, which absolutely has to be created. And that is not at all understandable or acceptable.
In France, residents of Annecy town gathered to pay tribute to the victims of the attack. 4 children and 2 adults were injured. Local people gathered in the same park where the tragedy occurred on Thursday. Mayor Francois Astor was also present to pay tribute to the people who rushed to arrest the man accused of the attack. He added that these people had reacted with courage. Among them were 2 municipal workers who tried to stop the attacker with a shovel, a young man renting out pedal boats, and a math teacher who both tried to step in, and a tourist who chased the attacker. Childminder also rushed in to rescue 2 injured children. Attack left the normally peaceful lakeside town in shock. Hundreds of people have laid flowers, soft toys, and heart-shaped balloons at the site of the stabbing. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, Dial 461, and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Israel, thousands took to the streets of cities and towns across the country for the 23rd straight week protesting controversial judicial reform plans as well as death violence hitting Arab communities. The hard-right government's reform proposal would curtail the authority of the Supreme Court and give politicians greater powers over the selection of judges. In March, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had announced a pause to allow for talks on the divisive reforms. Some protesters held signs criticizing government inaction over a soaring crime wave that has affected the country's Arab minority. Since the start of the year, some 100 people have been killed in crime-related violence in Arab Israeli communities. Iran's Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei says his country is not opposed to an agreement with the West as long as the nation's nuclear infrastructure remains intact. During a speech at a meeting with a group of nuclear experts and officials on Sunday in Tehran, the leader highlighted the work carried out during the last years of Iranian nuclear managers, authorities, and activists to build an important infrastructure for the country's nuclear industry. He also pointed out that his nation could reach agreements in some fields with the West, but emphasized that the country's nuclear infrastructure must be respected. The Iranian leader further denounced the claim by the country's enemies that Tehran is developing nuclear weapons and called it lies, and reiterated that Iran is not seeking to produce nuclear weapons. Shelling and gunfire resumed Sunday in the Sudanese capital after the end of a 24-hour ceasefire. The latest in a series of ceasefire agreements enable civilians to stock up on essential supplies or flee. According to NGO's Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, over 1,800 people have been killed nearly 2 months into the war between Army General Al-Burhan and Parliamentary Commando Dagalo. On the other hand, the United Nations reported that nearly 2 million people have been displaced, including 476,000 who have sought refuge in neighboring countries. In this context, Egypt reversed a visa exemption for children, women, and elderly people, and now all Sudanese citizens will have to obtain visas before crossing the border. On Sunday, representatives of the European Commission arrived in Tunisia to negotiate a financial aid package conditional on the acceptance of the International Monetary Fund loan. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, arrived in Tunis accompanied by the Prime Ministers of the Netherlands and Italy, Mark Rutte and Giorgia Meloni, respectively, who were received by Tunisian President Kais. The European representatives proposed an increase in EU funding of €900 million plus €150 million in budget support in exchange for Tunisia's acceptance of a loan from the IMF, which has not yet been ratified. Tunisia is indebted to the tune of 80% of its gross domestic product and reached an agreement in principle with the IMF in mid-October 2022, but the fund has asked the country to carry out economic reforms, including the abolition of state subsidies to the detriment of the poorest. In Canada, the wave of wildfires in recent days has consumed more than 4 million hectares of forest. Canadian authorities have evacuated some 2,400 people from the town of Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia as a precautionary measure as the flames spread. The workers of the different security and rescue forces are concentrating on patrolling the populated areas close to the fire to avoid loss of life, despite the fact that an evacuation order has been in force since the 8th of June. The nation has recorded a total of 2,392 bushfires so far this year, 73 of which are in British Columbia and are still active. 2 days after arriving in Quebec to assist their Canadian colleagues in the fight against the historic fires that are ravaging the country, French civil protection firefighters and rescue workers are working on operational preparation. This is an essential, indispensable and unavoidable phase, says Fabrice Mosse, head of operations for the Southern Detachment sent to Quebec.
Today is the last day that we're really going to be preparing ourselves. Today has really been devoted to exchanging information, passing it on, and operational preparation, so that from tomorrow onwards we can finally take actions on the fires, on Fire 299 here at Notre Dame de Lorette. This preparation was essential, indispensable, and unavoidable, and that's why we haven't been able to go out into the field until now, because we had to carry all this information with us. Safety information, information about the equipment to be used in the best possible way from tomorrow morning. It is an extremely dense forest that cannot be penetrated with relatively few trails. So the helicopter is essential to be able to work and get to the edges of the fire. The other thing is that there are no water points. We don't have a reserve of water tanks like we have in the south of France. So we have to adapt ourselves to the number of water sources in the area and work with the natural water points and suction procedures to be able to use the water to extinguish the fire and reach the edges.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.